Um, so, first of all, welcome to this moment of conversation. Is the Diocesan Formation Corner. So we have this venue every Friday from 11 to 12:30, and we are bringing different learning opportunities to this venue, and especially questions that are related to what we are going and facing right now as a church, as a congregation, as an institution as well. So it's a dynamic way of having some important congregations. And today, we have been blessed to have with us Bill Campbell, and as Director of Institutional Advancement and Episcopal Church Foundation. So he's going to be sharing with us some of the basics and some important insights about online giving. And especially in this day and age, we have churches that have been now way ahead in online giving, some churches that are in the middle way, and some churches that are now at the beginning stage of that. So we are going to be open to receive and be in conversation with all of you in whatever stage you are. And so that is what we are now. So before we move on, I want to start with a moment of prayer. And I want to put Yvonne O'Neill on the spot to lead us in a moment of prayer. If you don't mind, Yvonne.
For this beautiful day with the sun shining around us, but as we are engulfed in this pandemic, so we ask your blessings upon all those who are sick, who have been affected by the virus, and we especially ask you to bless the people who are taking care of them. And we ask you, as we gather here together, to discern how our church can continue to minister to everyone by having the necessary funds. We ask you to be among us today as we discuss this important matter. And in all that we do to your honor and glory. So we ask all this in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Yvonne. And I now pass the ball to Bill. Welcome, Bill.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here with y'all. I'm down here in Alexandria, Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., but the Episcopal Church Foundation is headquartered in New York City. We consider ourselves to be very close with the Diocese of New York. We are thankful for all the partnerships and opportunities that we have with the Diocese of New York, and we're always happy to help. I'm going to share my screen with y'all, and when we want to ask questions, I think we should ask questions. Do me a favor though, and ping the chat box or something if you want to ask a question, because if everyone starts jumping in all at once, that might get kind of difficult. I don't know if you'll have a regular protocol for how you conduct these calls, but we're going to have 60 some odd people in this already. And so if we all start jumping in, it might get a little chaotic. And as I share my screen, you won't be able to see everything. Victor, I'm just going to rely on you. If you see something happen and you need someone needs to speak up or ask questions, Victor, please let me know to stop or something. So here we go. All right. So how we move from a tool of convenience to a driver of stewardship. So my name, like Victor said, I'm Bill Campbell, and I'm currently the Director of Institutional Advancement of the Episcopal Church Foundation. Before this, I was the Executive Director of Forma, and many of you might have sent your formation staff to a Forma conference, or you yourselves may have gone to a Forma conference, or you may have seen myself and others from Forma running around General Convention in Austin, Texas with our hair on fire. And before that, I was the Director of Institutional Advancement, the Director of the Annual Fund, forgive me, at Virginia Theological Seminary. And while I was at Virginia Theological Seminary, I helped spark the online giving program to go from, yes, you will receive a copy of this presentation, thank you. I helped spark the online giving program to go from about a $75,000 a year program to somewhere around $350,000 a year. Now, that wasn't because I'm some kind of genius. That wasn't because I have a better plan for online giving than others. Some of that is just the time when I was there. Online giving wasn't a thing that anyone focused on, and then suddenly including our donors. And so a little bit of what we are going to talk about today is a few of the ways in which you yourselves can either start from scratch or inject a little bit of energy into an online giving program. We're going to go through a few basic pieces. We're going to do a little bit of beyond basics today, but I'm also going to be available again next Tuesday, and I will be going even a step further next week. Now, this matters for a lot of reasons. Before we entered this COVID crisis moment, essential to most secular nonprofits, because online giving is the best possible way to raise your money. And there are a lot of reasons for this, but the main one is that the return on investment, ROI, and the reason why online giving has a wonderful ROI is because emails are cheap. People clicking a link is cheap. Snail mail is not exorbitantly expensive, but it's not as cheap as emails and electronic communication. The other reason why online giving is really important historically is that it's easy to create recurring donors. Monthly donors are one of the most important donors an organization can have. And again, this is more geared towards the secular idea of fundraising. And I'm not going to talk about secular fundraising even a majority of this time, but this is why online giving became so important, was that monthly donors are crucial to the life of an organization. Not only do they give more over time, they miss the money they give to you less, therefore they're more likely to give more, and it's easier to move them up the donor chain. And we'll talk a little bit about this on Tuesday and what I mean by the donor chain or the donor pipeline. It's called a moves management system for those of you who are very familiar with fundraising speak. And then finally, in this current age, when we can't gather, when the offering plate isn't available to us, when a lot of people are actually worried about receiving mail and dealing with mail, and then politically, who knows if we're going to have the U.S. mail after June right now. I am fingers crossed and praying that we figure something out here. If you don't have an online giving platform in some form, you will not be receiving donations right now for the large part. Okay, so we're going to get started, and then we'll start. Well, there is a moment where I will stop, and we'll get to some questions in a minute. So again, the first thing you need to know before you're going to do anything, even if you're already doing it, is know your why. If you haven't read any of Simon Sinek's leadership work, I highly recommend it to you. But there needs to be, for us, not just a missional component and a theological component, but then just organizationally in general, any action you're doing, there needs to be a fundamental reason that it points back to your mission and your values, right? And so know your why is extremely important. Online giving is not a big mystery. Online giving doesn't require a committee to sit down and look at your mission statement and values. It's just important to be able to understand the internal reasons why you're creating an online giving program and pushing people to an online giving program. You're going to get pushback if you've never done it before. And it is going to be difficult for people to understand why you're really pushing this program onto it. And so knowing your why and being able to stick to this is going to be important. And then getting started in your parish, and then, or how do we inject life into our current platform or program? This is going to be really important. There's a couple of things that you need to think about in terms of how set up your parish might be for an online giving platform. Do you have a website? Very important. If you don't have a website, do you have some sort of way of communicating with broadly and quickly with your entire parish? At this point, I'm pretty sure almost every parish, I've only encountered a few parishes over the past 18 months that did not actually have their own website, but they did have some form of web presence. And even if you only have a Facebook group page, you can still raise money on Facebook, but you have to decide where is your online presence, and how are we going to connect online giving to it? All right, if you already have a website, great. If you already have an online giving page, even better. But then the way in which we inject life into the online giving program is to get started with your web-based communications, your text communications, and any of your conversations going forward. What you essentially you have to have is almost boilerplate language that every single person in your organization knows and can say in their sleep, along the lines of, I really appreciated our opportunity to speak today. Please remember, if you want to fulfill your pledge or even increase your pledge in this moment, you can go online and do that now. And then the information how to do it. That is one that I just made up. And if you're sending an email, every single large-scale communication you send needs to include some kind of ask in it. And again, we'll get to the finer details on that as we go along. So something that I want to show you in terms of the easiest tools to use and the easiest place to get started. There's a guy named Jason Smith. He's in Pennsylvania. He's a good Episcopalian. And some links to some of his work are over in the chat box right now. And I'm going to stop this share, and I'm going to go to a different version of share so that you can see some of his work right here. So a couple of things to note. This right here is his guide to online giving, right? It is a nicely illustrated, simply laid out program that offers a little bit of why, a little bit of context, how you actually shop for a service, how you evaluate sites, how you evaluate the interface, how you evaluate the payment processor, all of the steps you need to take. Now, I need to say off the bat, Jason's givingtools.com actually has his own online giving portal and processing. He is trying to sell you a service. That being said, his service is very reasonable. And he's someone who is a good resource in the church. I'm actually hoping to do a webinar that'll be available to the whole church with Jason in the future. Another key tool is that Jason actually wrote an article for the Episcopal Church Foundation Vital Practices as the COVID-19 crisis was beginning. So you can see this was updated on March 13th in 2020, right? So that was just not that long ago, feels like years ago, but not that long ago. And he tackles some of the reasons why you need to have some sort of online giving process in place. And then he even tackles a few of the ways in which you can accomplish collecting money online. And we're going to get to some of that as well in our conversation today. So the questions, though, that you need to ask before you even get to Jason's tools and Jason's resources are some questions that I find that most people that many of our churches don't know the answer to. Okay, so what system is your website built upon? All right, are you a WordPress site? Do you have no idea what that question means? You need to have some sense of who built your website, who is managing that content. So, for example, someone who I work very closely with is Merrill Watley at Membership Vision. He owns the Forma website, for example. He doesn't own it; we own it, but it is built on his system, and he is the one who can update content the easiest. I also can update content on that as well as others. Now, the Episcopal Church Foundation, Karis Bahagnathan is the communications director, and she works closely with the designers and the tech side designers of the website, but she's the one who manages all the information on that and who can make substantive changes. Those are things you're going to need to know about setting up your own online giving portal. And then this is also really important, and I cannot stress this particular question is more important than you could ever imagine. Who is actually going to be receiving the gifts on the parish end? Does that person understand how to utilize modern software? Does that person understand how to utilize more of an online accounting process than a classic accounting process? And then the last one is, how tech savvy are your own parishioners? Are they comfortable using computers? Are they kind of smartphone savvy? These are just the first questions you need to ask yourself before you get started and even going to see Jason's website, because that is already going to be limiting you into your choices. And the reason why that's important, and Jason mentions this one off the first in the Vital Practices article, is that PayPal is super easy. I mean, you can set up a PayPal right now. Especially if your website is built on WordPress or Squarespace or one of those, PayPal makes a widget that goes right into that. You don't even have to think about it. It's all set up. The money goes into a PayPal account. You connect your bank account to that. It goes through. You could literally have zero tech ability and get a PayPal online giving program set up, and you could be done by the end of this webinar and not have to worry about any of the technical pieces. Now, what's the downside? Where's the catch? PayPal charges a lot of money per transaction. Right? They're at 3%, if not more, and they charge a dollar amount, and I think it's 33 cents or something like that. It may even be 50. It's in Jason's resources. So that's a lot of money for people who are going to be giving to your website. You're going to be, for every transaction, you're going to be giving PayPal more of that money than you would probably need to or like, with just a little bit more research and stretch. And this is why, again, I like to point to giving tools and to that PDF that's linked into your chat box. This is why it's very important to really think about, okay, how much time can I spend on this? Who are the people I'm going to be working with? How easy do I need to make it? Is it worth spending the money on something that's a little more expensive in order for it to be easy? Or do we have the ability to spend a little bit of time getting set up correctly, and we can spend less money on the long run and spend a little bit of time training and getting ready to implement a program like this? These are questions that you're going to have to be able to ask yourself. So I'm going to let our former President Obama answer. Is it right for me? Not really. Maybe. It's classified. It's so much of whether or not Text to Give is a good program for you depends on a few key issues. Is your giving page easy to use on a mobile device? Right? Is your website mobile friendly? Does your giving page on your website is it also responsible mobile devices? And this is really important, especially in terms of secular giving, how easy is it to make a gift on your online platform? I will say I am working on this currently, and we will continue to work on this at the Episcopal Church Foundation. Our giving page is cumbersome. It asks a lot of questions. It takes a long time to fill out. And one of the things that I'm noticing, I can't say it's a trend yet, but what I'm noticing is that people go to our giving page and they don't complete a gift. And I know that because I see how many people click to go to our giving page from the emails we send out, and then I see how many gifts actually are successful. And you can see that, okay, I had 200 clicks to go to the giving page, but only 50 people actually made a gift. Now, some of those people just clicked the link because they were curious, but a higher percentage than I would like are people who are abandoning the gift. That's what we call it, abandoning the gift, in order, because it's become too cumbersome. And so one of the things that we've seen become very popular in terms of secular online giving processes is how streamlined can you make your online giving page? What are the fewest amount of questions you can ask and still understand who the person is, be able to acknowledge them timely, account for their gifts, and keep either your accountants or auditors happy? That's important. Keeping your accountants, your treasury, your finance committee, the treasurer of your vestry happy are important, and you need to be able to do that. And that's a fine dance to make their money. All right. Whether or not Text to Give is right for you also will depend on how many members. So when I do programs about digital faith formation and online faith formation, one of the biggest pushbacks that I got a question coming in. Oh, thanks, Eric. Eric just told me that it sounds like I'm tapping my desk, and I am not tapping my desk, but I'm not sure what that tapping sound is from, and I appreciate you letting me know that. I'll try to make sure that there's no more sound coming through. One of the biggest moments for me in terms of cell phone usage in parishes around what came to me when I was doing faith formation for online platforms. And it was made very clear to me that not everyone has necessarily access to smartphones. Not everyone has access to the internet. Not everyone particularly is comfortable or accustomed to giving money on an online service like we have. People who are from and this one was the one that was, this was the example that was given to me. Someone from Kenya is very used to moving money around on a old style texting cell phone. The same was true with one of our Hispanic congregations here in Virginia. They were very accustomed to using text message. There are all kinds of chat apps that people are used to doing, and they're used to moving money around through services like Venmo, WhatsApp, and things like that. And they also might be comfortable giving to your organization through those. It really requires you understanding and knowing your congregation. All right, so I'm going to stop right here for a moment, and I'm going to allow us to get into some questions you might have before we move on. Does anyone have a question based on anything I've already said? And I also would take feedback. Eric sent this to me privately, but about that it sounds like I'm tapping my desk, even though I'm not. If anyone thinks I'm moving too fast, if you want me to slow down my voice, let me know. It's okay. I take constructive criticism easily. Don't worry. Any questions you might have?
The way we are going to proceed with the questions is there is a function down here in your section that says raise your hand. And if you don't mind raising your hand, they say participants, there's an option there where you can do that, and then we can proceed. And so make sure that you unmute.
I got a question from a person in here named Divine Love. Which, if that's your real name, that's a wonderful name. And they asked, can Venmo be used without fees? Yes and no. It requires bank-to-bank transfers in order to be used cheaply. And I'm not even sure that that is considered free even when you start to download your money from it. But it can be used very cheaply if someone connects their bank account to it. If they connect their credit card to it, they're actually at like a 3.5% fee, which is high, really high. But they sometimes charge that fee to the sender and not the receiver. And I'm not sure the exact details on that. Megan Corbett has asked, we had a text to give app called Tithely, and we gave it up because it was expensive and cumbersome. So it seemed like Venmo was better. Tithely is wonderful. People love Tithely. It's easy. That's the reason why people like Tithely. It is expensive. It's very expensive. And Megan is saying Venmo definitely has fees. Yes. No, text-based giving is not really going to be chapter 2. I just mention it because a lot of people have questions about it. I don't particularly find text to giving to be that essential for worshiping communities. And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, the majority of Episcopal churches, right? And let's talk about what the Episcopal Church looks like. The majority of the Episcopal Church has access to these online tools, right? That's not fair. That's not particularly the most diverse thing I could have said in my life, but it is true that the majority of Episcopal churches have access to these online tools. However, for certain communities, text to give is the backbone of how they communicate with one another. Just text messaging in general is the backbone of how they communicate to one another. Gawain, you asked about Zelle. I gotta say, I don't know anything about that. That is the first time I've ever heard about it.
Zelle is bank to bank.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Megan Corbett, you want to say something? Yes.
Okay. Hi, Megan Corbett. Hi, Dorothy. I see lots of friends. So here's what I want to say. I'm from St. Bart's. I'm the director of giving, and we have a pretty mature online giving. We have, so we were the ones that had Tithely, and we found no one used it. They had to set up an account. It was $20 a month. We didn't collect enough. So we kind of let it go. I think Venmo, even though it has fees, a lot of people have that app. But I'm going to agree with you, Bill, that our population is not a population that's used to giving or moving money around on a mobile device. But I want to tell you something about Zelle, which is a product not owned by the banks, but kind of used by the banks, like Chase.
Right.
And I used to use it all the time to give money or even receive money from my children. I know, money from grown children. So guess what happened though? So Chase promos Zelle all the time. And I sent my daughter $90 to pay her for something. This was just like last year. And guess what? She got hacked for $2,000. And it is not secure. That is key. And the banks don't pretend to, stand by this product that they push. Okay, so that is really interesting.
This is important. And Megan,
it's actually Megan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. You bring up a good point here, and this is something to think about for all of these purposes, except for many of these online based, but a lot of the Venmo, even parts of PayPal, not all of PayPal, but parts of PayPal, a lot of these text to give things, these aren't insured, these aren't particularly protected, and they're extraordinarily hackable. But now let's be clear, that's true for almost everything these days, except for the fact that when you make an online gift with a debit card or a credit card or a bank-to-bank transfer, those actions are more protected than anything else. Now, that doesn't mean your website can't get hacked and people can't start stealing the identities of folks off there, but folks generally have identity protection. Right? When you start moving into Venmo, some areas of PayPal, even Network for Good that I use Network for Good for a long time. There's no guarantees there. We're in a whole different system. And so there's a couple of things that I like to mention to folks to think about in terms of their online giving platforms and processors to use. I love this conversation, and I hope it's okay for the majority of people here. We're going to get a little into the weeds here, which is fun. There's a program that I use all the time. It's a back channel processing program called Stripe. It is my favorite. It is very secure. It is very stable. It is kind of the industry standard amongst back end. So it's a type of program, Stripe, you can look it up. I use it for everything. It's the type of program that can tie into almost any system. And this is the other thing that's important to think about. If you're an administrator at a church and you're looking at a problem of, okay, we have a gift that comes in, right? So let's just pretend like it's a check. A check hits the mailbox, you receive that check. Someone takes that check and they do something with it. Hopefully they're making a photocopy of it and a photocopy of anything that came inside the envelope with it and a photocopy of the letter or scanning it into something, and you have copies of all of that, and then that check gets stamped with something immediately and sent off to the bank, and then a version of that copy makes it to whomever is acknowledging gifts, and they write a letter immediately, and that person is acknowledged. Right? That's beautiful. Mwah! Gorgeous. That's probably not how it works. It's not even how it works at ECF, but it's a great way for it to work. Now, online giving, all right? So someone makes a gift. That gift immediately triggers an automatic email 90% of the time that says, thank you so much. Your gift means the world to us. We are able to do all of these things because of your gift. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so immediate response, really good. People feel good about that. Not as good as a letter, but it's good. It's acknowledgement of some sort. that gift triggers some sort of notification on the back end. A person has to receive that, bring it into the database, mark the gift, acknowledge the gift with a written letter, and then have some sort of tracking system of tying that gift not only to a financial institution, but also to your own database, whether that be an Excel spreadsheet in your hard drive, or if you're using something like ACS. Now, if you're a church and you're utilizing some kind of database, be it a Salesforce-based database, ACS, my God, if you've got if you've got Razor's Edge, well, one, God love you and God bless you. But if you're using some kind of database like that, well, the good news for you is that there are many of these online giving platforms that tie into that and automatically connect a gift to the record. So if you have if you're at the nascent stage of an online giving process, if you're beginning out on an online giving process, but you do have a database for your church, like an ACS, there's hundreds of these things now, but if you have some kind of database that's an official database beyond a Google spreadsheet or an Excel file, they probably 99% of the time offer an online giving processing service, at the very least some sort of online giving page that ties into your database. If they themselves don't offer a processing service, that's when I would suggest you take a look at Stripe, right? If they offer an online processing service, so like we use Blackbaud, we use Razor's Edge at the Episcopal Church Foundation. Razor's Edge, yeah, it's especially if you're on the NXT platform, real good. And it has its own processing, Blackbaud services. They can, so that when someone makes a gift, all their information gets directly tied to their record. There's an acknowledgement. It processes the money into the bank. Everything is taken care of all at once. It's so easy. That's why online giving is important. That's why all this stuff is important. But it's a little bit like, y'all, think about all the things I just said. Someone has to understand all of that. Someone has to be able to work with all of that, right? If I'm sitting here talking to you about this, everything I just said over the past 5 minutes, if that sounds like Greek to you, one, you're not alone. Not at all. You're not alone. Two, it sounded like Greek to me 10 years ago, right? Now I'm 38 years old, all right? So this was new to me a while ago as well. It's not hard to learn. It's hard to get your head around. It's okay. There are easier systems to use, right? Like I said, Andrew over here our parish doesn't look like most of the Episcopal Church. Little online presence, few resources, and more people who text than go on the internet. Okay, so Andrew, we're going to spend some more time on Text to Give next week. The other thing I want to say is the people you should be talking to in the community of online giving around text-based giving are actually your Hispanic congregations, not conversations. Hispanic conversations too, but congregations mainly. And in fact, my guess is that Victor could probably connect you with some folks who are doing this work. Danielle Villores Rivera here in the Diocese of Virginia has done a lot of great work on this. And so those type of, and then any sort of true African community in your diocese would be able to help you. Victor just immediately said, go to Tithely and use Tithely. I will say this, it is super easy. It requires very little setup and very little skin in the game on your part. It is more expensive than other options, right? And what I mean by that, just to go back and explain again what I mean by that, you should and could set up an online giving program. It doesn't matter if it's text-based or online-based, for around a 2% fee per transaction, right? There's some that even now are at like 1.7, right? Whatever. 2% is good. If you're finding it around 2%, you're doing well, right? Tithely, PayPal, even parts of Venmo, they're 3 or higher, right? And so, okay, if someone makes $100 gift, right, not a big deal, okay? Someone makes $100 gift, whether it's a 2% or 3%, it's not a huge deal. However, if 1,000 people make $100 gift, right, which is the goal, suddenly it becomes a big deal, right? You're starting to lose hundreds of dollars, right? An example of online, like why online giving has become so important, and the effect of transaction fees that happened to us at Virginia Seminary, was we had one of our larger donors at Virginia Seminary. She made a substantive gift to Virginia Seminary when we were rebuilding the chapel. And she wanted to make that gift with her credit card because she wanted the points. All right. And which seemed ridiculous to me at the time. However, I'm not going to say no. It was lovely. It was a massive gift. She had to do it in installments because of the size of it. Yay, dream gift came in the door. But you know, the processing fee suddenly became one of the most important things in my life for about 2 weeks, right? And so we were doing everything we could to switch quickly to a tiny processing fee. We wound up using some system that was incredibly technically complicated, but because of all the complications, and it was cheap. And so we were able to get the gift in using the smallest fee-based service, okay? Yes, Father Steve says Tidely is expensive, all caps. He's not wrong. He's not wrong. However, Father Steve, I will say this, it is easy, all caps. So that's important. You got to determine what you're willing to spend on. Adding the option of covering the fees. Yes, we found that as well when we did when we changed our online giving to Network for Good. Network for Good allows the opportunity for donors to cover the fees. I actually had like a 98% fee coverage rate on my Network for Good. That also bore out with using Eventbrite for events. About 98% of people cover the fees themselves. ACS Realm, okay, y'all, ACS about 14 years ago was the bane of my existence. And I would have told anyone using it to just get out. I love the new system. I absolutely love it. I think it is a good update. Over the past few years, they've done a good job with it. And I think their online giving platform is really usable. I think it's good. I think it's solid, it's stable, and it's good. Good Shepherd, you're seeing a lot of good advice being here. Realm, again, it's good. It's a good, stable system. So Reverend Hal Rourke has this whole thing. I'm guessing, Hal, you're sending this out to your entire congregation, the Church of the Good Shepherd. By the way, I was born and raised at a Church of the Good Shepherd in Augusta, Georgia. Great name, good work. And so, Hal, do you want to say a couple of things real quick about this? Real brief. You're on mute. You just muted yourself.
I'm unmuted, right?
Yep, you're fine now. You're good.
Sorry. So we, like others, we were having real challenges of getting pledges in. So we decided to do a number of things, and we thought the online would be the big thing. And we're finding that mailing it through the mail and then dropping it off at a new drop box on the side of the building, believe it or not, are the two things that people find the most comfort with. I think part of that is there's a need to kind of be around the space, and we're a little more rural, so it's a little different here. But it's hard getting people, to your point, it's hard getting people to kind of move into online giving when they're not used to that. We're finding that to be a real hurdle. So thank you for this. It's very, very helpful.
Sure. Well, that's interesting that you bring up moving people to online giving. There's a part of this that you have to train your donors, right? What is Oprah's like favorite advice to give people? You have to train others how to treat you. You have to train your donors to move to online giving. And I mentioned this just, it was like a throwaway line at the beginning of this about how we moved from a smaller system of online giving, a smaller portion of our online giving at Virginia Seminary, to a much larger portion of online giving. It came through donor training. I hope you don't mind. I'm going to use the term donor because I was secularly trained in fundraising. I hope that doesn't throw people off or push people away. Your congregants are not necessarily donors in the sense in which of the word I'm using it. However, they are making donations to the congregation, but they're also practicing good stewardship. So how do you train, Megan, I'll come back to you. I'm coming for you. How do you train your donors is actually tricky, and it is very contextual. I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a few minutes as we move forward. But it does require breaking some eggs. Okay. I will tell you that the worst responses that I got at Virginia Seminary, at Forma, even now at Episcopal Church Foundation, are about really pushing hard to get people to give online and become monthly donors. Eric, you asked a question to everyone. How are others handling building users? When you say that, Eric, and you can just type your response to this, do you mean people who are actually showing up to use the building, as in like employees? Are you talking about, like, I hope you're not talking about like Altar Guild, but maybe you are.
No, I'll go on mute. And we have a lot of self-help groups that use our building, and they regularly contribute to, on a monthly basis to our congregation. And most of them, because of the groups that they are cash. So has anybody had any success with moving them to an online platform so that we can, now for at least for the time being, not have to deal with people actually going into the church, taking the cash and depositing in the bank?
Oh, hey, if anyone has a response to Eric's question, would you just type it in the box over there? That is an interesting question, and one that I had not thought of in terms of an online giving structure. And you make a good point there, Eric. This is something that I'm tagging in my brain for later, for something ECF to start thinking about in terms of resources further. How are we equipping parishes to help their 12-step groups meet? How are parishes helping 12-step groups meet online, and giving them access to Zoom platforms or something so they can meet online? I know AA meetings and NA meetings and other 12-step based meetings and other support meetings are moving to those platforms on their own. But thank you, Eric. You've given me something to think about for a resource in the future. So Megan, I promised I'd come back to you. Hi.
I know, I'm so sorry, but and I see a parent from my former school. So I too was trained in a secular world, but I was on my vestry. Dorothy Caulfield here can attest to that. And I've done the stewardship drive, and you name it, I've done it. But I have found converting check writers, my regular people, they're still sending checks. We're in New York City. This is forcing a staff member to go to the church once a week. She actually has to stand online in the post office to collect our mail, then go to the office, process the checks. So like as they do a check batch, and we do use Razor's Edge and all that, I am one-on-one calling folks or emailing, thanking them for their check and asking them if I can help them transition to online giving, either using a credit card or the ACH direct debit. Right. And it's so funny. I know they're going to go right back to using checks, but I've had probably a 50% success rate. But I had this gentleman say to me the other day, Megan, I will never do that. I don't want to put my banking information or whatever out on the World Wide Web. And I didn't say this, but I was like, friend, some guy in Bulgaria can buy that info. Your information is already out there if you have a bank account and a credit card, and but you will not persuade someone. And I was like, okay, if you won't, come over to the online, would you consider not writing 4 checks for $25 each, maybe writing 1 check, or maybe writing 3 months worth if someone can do that. So it's just less for our staff member, who, by the way, is walking from her home in Lower Manhattan to Midtown because she doesn't want to be on the subway.
Yeah, Megan, I think one of the things you bring up that Hal mentioned in the beginning of his statement is the difference. I mean, if you're I live in Alexandria, I live outside Washington, D.C. If I found out that my congregation, St. Paul's in Old Town, was forcing the accountant to show up and pull something out of a box, I would hit the roof. But my little church in Augusta, Georgia, if they were doing the same thing, you know, there's like 30 people. And I mean, you know, I don't know, it's fine. Augusta has a lot more than 30 people. But it's a different situation, right? There's an easier way to avoid, you can social distance, you can, you know, it's not a lot of people are coming by, so you can wipe down that box before you touch it. You can do all those things. Now, we got some good questions here. Thank you, Steve. Automated clearinghouse is ACH. What that means, okay, ACH, automated clearinghouse, that is how banks communicate with one another. And the reason why it is so cheap is because of the system that already is in place. It's cheap because they're already having to use this system, and all you're doing is putting your money, right? Imagine there's a river, right? And you want to get from, and the river goes from your house to the ocean, and you want to send something to the ocean. Well, it's cost nothing, and it is very easy to just drop something in the river and it go to the ocean. That is what ACH is doing. ACS is automated church system. And it's an online database for churches. It's really good. Check it out. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back. I'm going to go back and share my screen, and we're going to move forward. That was good. Y'all were good at asking questions. Thank you. Sometimes I do these things and people just stare back at me. Here we go. I need that thing to move. Stop it. Here we go. So, like, one of the main things here with online systems, and I include this line about you can't click a link in a snail mail letter. Well, because I was doing a presentation on online giving a few years ago, and someone literally asked the question, well, how do I get them to follow this crazy long link in my letter to them when I mail it to them? And it was clear that, like, okay, there was a disconnect. So, a few things to think about. You have to, you desperately need, almost have to have some online system of communicating broadly with your donors. Again, it doesn't matter if your entire congregation is listed in an Excel spreadsheet on your hard drive. You have to have an email address for everybody. You need to be able to load that email address into a system like Constant Contact, like MailChimp, like you name it. If you're using a database, they probably already give you the option of sending emails to all of your constituents, all of your donors, all of your congregants. However, if you're using an older version of that, you may not like that email service very much, and they don't often make good looking emails. So for example, when I was at Forma, we were not spending a lot of money on these processes. We were trying to use a database that will allow us to not spend a lot of money, do all the little things we needed to do. And then I also utilized the free version of MailChimp to send out all of our communications. It's complicated. You don't have to follow all the steps there, but just know that things like Constant Contact and MailChimp can be very inexpensive. They can also get very expensive. You can, if you were to import 10,000 or even 3,000 names into MailChimp, you would be having to pay a monthly fee. If you're under a 500 person threshold, it's free to you. I think it's still 500. I hope it's still 500. I haven't been under 500 in years, so I don't know anymore. But those systems allow you to build really good looking emails. They allow you to easily insert pictures. They allow you to easily insert text. They also allow you to kind of easily create buttons and other things to encourage people to click on a link. And all of this goes to the second part of how do we train our donors. I mean, one of the things I loved about what Megan was saying there was this personal touch, right? So the big complaint we get with these large style, high, like good ROI, good return on investment, mass communication, annual giving style systems, which, let's face it, that's what online giving started as. We lose the personal touch. And what I loved about what Megan was saying was that she's going to take some time. She's going to call the people who all give by check, and she's willing to sit on the phone and help them problem solve getting to making an online gift. And I will tell you, the trick isn't getting someone to make an online gift and then hope they do it again. If you can get someone to make one online gift, and especially if you're on the phone with them and can really encourage them to click that monthly donation box, you're extremely likely to get another gift from them, right? Once they've done it once, it's very easy for them to do it again. And if they take the moment to become a recurring donor, they never have to think about it again. It is such a powerful system. And a little bit about why I'm so nuts about monthly and recurring donors, and I'll go into this in detail on Tuesday. I'm a big supporter, a big proponent of this book, Nudge, that talks about social engineering in the modern era. It was written by the same guys who built the narwhal system for the Obama campaign. My wife's in politics, so I'm a little bit of a political nerd and junkie, but basically what they discovered through research is that monthly donors are the easiest to increase their gift at a later time. And I'll talk a lot about that on Tuesday. Monthly donors are worth their weight in gold to an organization. So how do we train our donors? The trick here is constant and consistent communication, right? Again, I go back to that, having the boilerplate message, especially now. Anytime you go on a camera, anytime you start communicating with a large audience being more than 20, you need to have some kind of thing you're going to say every single time that says, if you need to complete your pledge this year, please do so as soon as you can. You can give online here. Now, the give online here is important, and this gets complicated for some. It's not easy for everyone to figure out, but you need to create your donation website for your church needs to be as short as possible, right? As in stbarts.com/give, right? Like cogs.org/give. It needs to be, when I work
stbarts.org, just in case anybody wants to give.
Yeah, in case anyone wants to give. When I worked at St. Paul's in Alexandria, our website was Saint, all spelled out, Paul's, Alexandria, all spelled out, I think we were .net. And then our giving page was .net/donation_give. And I was just the youth minister. I didn't get involved in not just the youth minister. I was a very good director of Christian education, but I also did not at all get involved in the stewardship campaign. And so I knew my lane. I stayed in my lane, but I did point out that perhaps we could shorten that a bit. And we bought up a couple of different domain names, and this is important to think about. We bought up STPALEX, we bought STP, just buying these short domain names to be able to say to people in our snail mail letters and in our communications that were like, even if we were at the lectern for announcements, we were able to create a short, very, very short URL to say to people that was easy to remember. And for those of you who think like, oh my God, buying a domain name, it's not hard. You go to Google Domains, you can find them. You find them that relate to your church name, get a really short one, create .whatever/give. I often highly recommend that people look at .church. I love the .church web addresses. The evangelicals really jumped into .church, and I'm trying to get the mainline Protestant progressive denominations to look at that space as well. So Forma still is, and hopefully still will be, forma.church, right? And so if you're looking for the Episcopal Church Foundation's ministry of Forma, then you go to forma.church, right? And when we created Rooted in Jesus, it was rootedinjesus.church, right? So again, how do we train our donors? We train our donors by having a consistent message. And that message is, you can go here to do this vitally important thing. It is more, and it's right now is a great way to train your donors. Megan's point is an excellent point to make for any congregation who's worried about pushback. Hal, you're in a situation that your person can do that pretty safely. But if you wanted to stop accepting checks, you have the best argument you could ever make right now. It is a matter of public health, public safety, and setting a good example. We need We are a Christian organization. We need to set the best possible example. Therefore, we are going to do this the most ethically possible way. Okay? Now, what kind of problems are you going to run into? You're going to run into a lot of problems. Okay? One, you're going to have to, so say you're starting from scratch or you want to make a switch, right? So say you've been using a system and it turns out it's expensive. Maybe you've been using Tidely and you're hearing people say, well, Tidely is really expensive and you want to switch. Anything you switch to, you're going to have problems with, and you're going to need to test it, which, by the way, means that you need to have someone who's willing to make lots of small gifts on a credit card or debit card. When I set up when I created the new one at BTS, the entire advancement department probably made like, I don't know, each person in the advancement department, which is a lot of people at BTS, probably made like $50 worth of $1 gifts to test the system out. It takes a while to get it right. It doesn't take all day. It doesn't have to take weeks, but it takes a while to get it right. Also, let's talk a little bit about problems around usury, right? We created the online giving program at St. Paul's, and the rector there, Orrin Warder, he's, I think, a very good rector, and he by no means is anti-technology. He is living very much in the modern era, but he had a real problem with people going into debt to make a gift. And when we first started the program, you could only use bank to bank. So basically you could only take money out of a checking account. And then it was clear that people wanted to be able to make gifts with a card. And he said, okay, well, we're only going to allow debit cards. Well, that doesn't work. If you can put in a debit card, you can put in any type of card. And he eventually just had to say, look, this is obviously where the direction we're going. This is obviously what's happening. The momentum is far ahead of me here, so we're going to go into it. But he had high reservations about it, and I have a lot of respect for that. We, as a Christian denomination, we should not be encouraging people to go into debt to help our program. That being said, look, this is 2020. This is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. I do think that as you create or even encourage more online giving, you should, as a congregation, also do some more work around handling debt. That is just my one promo. I'm off the soapbox already. It's just something to really think about. And it relates to the second point. How do we keep this about stewardship and not about fundraising? Okay. We're not fundraisers. You did not graduate from seminary. If you're a priest, if you're the priest of your church and you're the rector or you're an associate rector and you're in charge of the stewardship campaign, you didn't graduate from seminary as a professional certified fundraiser, right? If you are working in a church, chances are, unless you're like Megan or myself or others on this call, you probably don't have this long background in fundraising before you got before you got hired to do this job and somehow stewardship landed on your plate. That is just the experience that I have in working with many churches across the church. If that doesn't describe your situation, please don't think I'm making a generalization about your current position or how you wound up there. But odds are that stewardship is something that you've been asked to do, and you may even have a heart and a passion for it. But we're not fundraisers. What we are people who are helping folks put their money where their passion and their heart lies. Okay? And so stewardship is more about relationship and less about encouraging a gift, right? So when I'm working with institutions like colleges and universities, when I'm working with athletic programs, when I'm talking to people in annual fund style campaigns for hospitals, what they're talking about is encouraging the gift, right? So what are the roadblocks we can remove for people to encourage the gift? And when I'm talking about stewardship, if we were to do this pure secular version of fundraising, well, if we removed every single roadblock towards giving a gift, we actually wouldn't be doing any stewardship at all, right? Some things that we do are going to be about putting a few roadblocks in the way of making a gift. And I say that a little tongue-in-cheek because we're not really stopping anyone from making a gift. What we're doing is encouraging relationship. We're encouraging communication. We're encouraging one-on-one communication. any of y'all know right now, and I hope many of you working your congregations are doing some kind of phone tree where you're trying to call the members of your congregation and get on the phone with people as much as possible. I know that we've been doing that at ECF, and we found that people are just dying to talk right now. People are just eager to hear from another person who isn't living in their house with them, and to talk about anything going on outside in the wider world and being connected to something that's not the 24-hour news cycle or anything happening in their living room. And so this is actually an excellent time to start an online giving platform or expand an online giving platform and keep it about stewardship, because people are itching for the conversation. I've got a few questions coming up, so we're going to stop here. I want to remind you all that we've got 30 minutes to do Q&A right now, but we will also have another hour on Tuesday for folks who want to join. I think Tuesday has historically been clergy only. I'll let Victor chime in about whether or not that's going to be the truth, be the case here. And again, we're going to go a little deeper on a few topics. So we're going to go 30 minutes of Q&A. All right. And then I've got a few final thoughts that I'll share with you as well as we get past that. Okay, so I'm going to stop share. We're going to be able to see each other. So everyone take a second. Make sure you're feeling like you're ready for everyone to look at you. All right. Find my mouse. There it is. And here we go. Okay. So we are closed building. No 12-step means great. Thank you. Challenge is identifying the networks of people who are willing to donate 5 to 15, even if they're not immediately connected. So Gawain, this is really good. All right. You know, we spend, I had to do a whole presentation to the ECF board about this topic alone, because when we're talking about fundraisers, we have a lot of respect, and when you get into the professional fundraising world, right? So forgive me for leaving stewardship for a minute, but when you get into the professional fundraising world, the superstars are the people who have access to these mega donors, right? And so I call them like game fishermen, right? So they're out there trying to catch 1,000-pound tuna, right? And my point to everyone is, look, if you want 1,000-pound fish, I'm really good at catching you 1,000 pounds of fish, right? So no, like, yeah, I know some rich people who are eager to make gifts to certain things. That's just because I've been doing this for a while. That's not because I have some like massive contact, or, you know, I'm not friends with Tom Steyer, although boy, I wish I were, you know, but you know, what I am interested in is creating grassroots response, right? And so I want to see a bubbling up. And the way you do that, right? The way you identify those people is when you start asking the question, you know. So a great conversation to have with someone is someone who makes $100 a year gift to your organization, right? The easiest ask you can make to them is, would you be willing to switch to $10 a month right now? Of course, now, granted, let's be real. Cash flow is a big problem right now for a lot of our congregations, right? If you have someone who normally makes $100 gift in December, chances are if you get them on the phone, you're going to be asking them to make all $100 today. And you should. This is exactly what you should be doing. Any of your end of year donors, any of the people who historically give at the end of the year, you should get on the phone with them right now and encourage them to give immediately now. And fundraising 101, you should also call them again at the end of the year and ask them to make that gift again. But that's beside the point. Right now, you should be asking people to make their gift immediately. However, also, and on top of, you should be asking and encourage them to make gifts online. Okay? Paula, you have a question about text giving for parishes, congregants. So please, Paula, just go off mute and ask it. Paula, can you hear me? Your audio is not working. So Paula, why don't you type it and we'll try to answer it. Eric, what are we looking at if the United States Postal Service is closed? Well, Eric, you've been here an hour. This is it. This is your best bad idea. This is it. If the United States Postal Service closes down, we will have no choice but to move everything we do to an online giving platform. Errol Holness, invitations should have been sent to Vestry Finance Committee, not just LEMs. I don't understand what you're suggesting people do with that, Errol. So if you would say more, that would be helpful. If you can type it, or if you need to say it, that would be fine. We have room for that. Oh, okay. So Paula, we talked a little bit about this earlier, and this is important. The text to give is the solution for that. And I want to be clear too about text to give. Okay, there's a couple of different ways to do that. One is you go to, I use text marks. Okay, so text mark is the service that I like to use. You have to have everybody's cell phone. You insert them in, you subscribe them, it costs money. And then what you wind up doing is you send everyone a message that says text cares to 411-411 or whatever. I don't know, that's not the number, but anyway, and then they get a response back. That response back encourages them to click on a link, and that link takes them somewhere, usually online, to make a gift. Now, the problem with that is that if someone's using an older style phone, they don't have a smartphone with internet connection, that link doesn't work for them. And so what we mean by text to give classically is the model of text give to this number, and it will give $10 immediately to an organization, or $20 immediately to an organization. That money gets added to their phone bill, right? And so if someone has no computer access, right, if they have no ability to go to a website on their phone at all, that is really the best possible way outside of, I do believe that there are other opportunities for that, but that is kind of the more classic model. Like, you see the Red Cross do this all the time. And you probably got, and you will get, starting very soon, you will probably get one message a day from whatever political party whatever political party the data suggests you're more familiar with or sided with. You're going to start getting a text a day from them doing the same thing. That is kind of the classic text to give model. There are newer models out there. There are other models out there. When we talk about using Venmo on a text to give, or Tithely, that actually involves having access to a smartphone and not another phone. Errol, you've gone off mute, so I'm going to imagine you're going to ask your question here.
Yes. So this invitation was sent out to our lay Eucharistic ministers. I believe that it should have been sent to our decision makers, investor members, treasurers, rather than just to the Eucharistic ministers. It's great stuff. I appreciate it. But the Eucharistic ministers don't make these decisions.
Oh, you're talking about the invitation to this presentation was, Errol, I'm going to allow Victor to respond to that, except to say that just based on the other people on the call, I don't think these are all lay Eucharistic ministers. I just think you were also included. But yes, I'll allow Victor to.
Yeah, the email was sent to the mailing list that we have in the diocese. So it's including lay leaders in any positional leadership, clergy, as well in any positional leadership in the diocese as well. So it's a must mailing that goes out, and the response has been given to everyone. So it's a good point, Errol. Thank you.
Yeah, and Errol, the other thing I want to say is, if you're a lay Eucharistic minister at your church, that means that you are a highly involved. You're a highly evolved member of your congregation. And if you want to see something changed, you have every right. You have all the authority God granted someone in baptism to walk up to your rector and say, hey, I heard this. This is really good. Why aren't we doing it? There is no sorry, any rectors out here who hate the advice I just gave Errol, sorry, but it's true. It is your church, sir. And so, okay, good. So Hal, I like this question. These are small church questions, and it's scrappy church questions. I honestly think that if you have a limited admin staff, and Hal, let me just like assume for a moment, by limited admin staff, you mean it's you. There's nobody else but you. The buck doesn't just stop with you. You're the one who has to take the buck. Then I'd strongly suggest that you find one of these all-in-one systems, right? If you're using a database that connects to some sort of online platform, you want to make this as simple as possible. That being said, though, this is important because online giving falls apart when the steps aren't really followed. If there's a system that's all in one and it seems easy, but you hate using it, guess what you're not going to do? You're not going to use it. You're not going to acknowledge your donors. You're not going to send thank you letters. You're not going to send follow-ups. You'll wind up setting up the thank you online. You'll allow that email to be all the acknowledgement they get, which isn't really best practice. So you need to figure out a system that allows you to do the stewardship piece, right? The stewardship piece, we call it, even in the secular world, they call it donor stewardship, right? You have to follow up. There has to be a personal follow-up directly from the head of the organization, or if you're a rather large organization, the head of the giving, the head of giving. So your advancement officer, your stewardship director, someone that is known and seen as being an authority needs to acknowledge that gift quickly. Now, I think normally under healthy, really good circumstances, so not COVID crisis, ECF is running around like a 2 to 3 day response time. That's okay, all right? At Virginia Seminary, we were the same, around 2 to 3 day response time. I mean, the people who have this, like when you make a gift to the Nature Conservancy, I swear before your gift is there, they're already sending you a letter back. I mean, it's unbelievable, but they have hundreds of people handling this, right? So it's a whole different system. Now, right now, we're in this COVID crisis. Our mail is not being picked up with any regularity. Online giving is robust, it's good, but it's not as good as I would like it to be. We're running about a week on acknowledgments. That's okay, right? I just want to say this for the good of anyone who can hear it, because you can't hear this enough right now. Whatever it is that you're doing right now, it's okay. It's all right. If you want to do a little better job, or if you want to kickstart your online giving, you can think about some of the things we've said here, but remember, the main thing you can do is communicate in a beautiful, intentional, and regular way with your congregation. And I haven't said much about what those communications should say, except that now I'll just point out, you need to also tell people what the good news is, right? Jesus Christ is risen, hallelujah, 1. And 2, what is your congregation doing right now, right? And it's not what you're doing. It's not what the rector is doing, right? Although that's interesting to people, right? It is somewhat about you, but it's really, what is your church doing right now? What are you hearing in a general way? You want to connect them to the larger story. The larger story is the good news in the gospel and what the people of Cogs and upstate New York are doing together, right? What are we doing as part of the good news? So adapt everything, e.g. Google Payments, if there isn't one available. Yes, okay, so Gawain, actually, if you follow that link at the very, very, very top that I sent you about givingtools.com, one of the things that Jason does, and I give the guy a lot of credit, he's offering his own service. His service is good. It's easy to use. It's easy to implement. It's cheap. I think he's actually running like 1.9 or 1.8 right now, which is good. He also provides you, and you have to, like, it takes a little while to figure out the math he's using, not because he's using fancy math, just because it's a complicated system to actually be able to compare apples to apples and not apples to oranges, but he gives you a spreadsheet you can use to compare the different services. Okay. And again, the fee structure can be really complicated with some of these. Some of the really good ones, I think Tidely is a great example of this. Not only are they charging something per transaction, but then they also charge you a monthly fee. Yeah. And so, some of these can just get real onerous real quick in order to use their service. So what I would suggest you do, and I go back to those questions. Remember those, the kind of like series of questions I asked, and it had the little image on the screen that said all of the questions. Those questions were, what are you set up on? So what are you currently using? Who manages your website? All right, who has access to actually editing the web pages of the website? You need to know that. Who's going to actually receive that, and what is the technical capabilities of the person receiving it? And then what are the technical capabilities of the general person in your parish, right? And when I say the general person in your parish, I really mean the person who's most likely to contribute, right? So what are the technical capabilities of the people willing to contribute? All of those questions need to be answerable before you even start on Jason's work, right? So Jason's website is where you go once you know or have a sense of those questions, right? And then you get to do the hard work of digging into how usable is it? How user-friendly is it? All of those things are important. And you have to constantly be asking yourself, how easy is it to make a gift, and how easy is it for us to receive that gift and respond? That takes a lot of the mystery out of it, right? That makes it sound very simple, but it's complicated, as you've just heard me go on for an hour and 15 minutes about. It's very complicated. You've given up on acknowledgement letters, acknowledging by email and phone constantly. Yeah, so exactly. I think, Megan, that's a good way to, so I don't know about the rest of y'all. I see my spiritual director and my therapist pretty regularly right now. And my therapist just yesterday told me, look, man, you got to give yourself permission to not get this right. You have got to get out of your own head and get out of your own way and just say it to yourself that you're giving yourself permission to not get it all right. Because guess what? This isn't the time for getting it all right. Every time I talk to somebody, I have to remind myself of this. I have good friends who remind me of this, and one of my jobs is to remind them of this. This has never happened before. We've never done this before. I don't know what the right way to respond for this. Yes, and Venmo, thank you, Megan. It does say Venmo says it's not for fundraising. Whatever. Just if you like it, use it. They're not going to stop you. Venmo does not police that. I think they're saying that because there's restrictions on the Apple Store for their ability to use that. So, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about Facebook giving. And one of the reasons why I don't love Facebook giving, one is they make it very difficult to set up. You have to actually be able to answer a phone that is legally tied to your organization, which means right now you have to go into your building, which I don't recommend, and you have to answer the phone at that desk in order to get Facebook started up. And part two, Facebook ties into Charity Navigator and Network for Good. And what Network for Good does, and I use Network for Good as a database and as a processor for a long time because it was really simple. I highly recommend people checking out Network for Good. It drives me crazy for the reason in which I'm about to state. They hold your money for a very, very, very long time, up to a month, maybe longer. So if someone makes a gift, you're not going to see that money for a long time. The reason for that is the way in which they make their money is by aggregating donations from all over the world into accounts and taking the interest off those accounts before they send you your money, right? That's how they make a lot of money. They make a lot of money off of this. And Facebook giving they tie to Network for Good and all that kind of stuff. Yes, Steve, you're so right. Not only is it near impossible to get good accounting, they don't care about that. They have protected the donor on their end, and they're giving you the money. As far as they're concerned, job done, right? So legally, donor intent is the only thing they care about, and they are taking the money and they're sending you the money. Doesn't matter, and it's frustrating. Yeah, no, Steve, exactly. And Steve, we canceled our Network for Good platform for Forma in January, and I still have money tied up in Network for Good. And I am no longer even a Network for Good user. For anyone wondering why we left Network for Good, even though I'm saying like, check it out, take a look at it, Forma merged with ECF. So that's the reason why I work at ECF now. And so that's ECF has Razor's Edge. We don't need Network for Good. So, you know, we've got about 10 more minutes. I'm happy to stick around for questions. I do want to answer questions. I also want to say, and I'll go back to sharing my screen for a couple of these final thoughts. So it's really important. There are literally millions of books on how to do online fundraising, but there's not a single one that deals with this. We are in an unprecedented time, right? I mean, the stuff going on, the problems going on around the world are so massive that there literally isn't a way to wrap our head around it without kind of cracking up. So you have to be careful, right? You have to think deeply about your context, but you also have to give yourself permission to not do this perfectly, right? Again, there are lots of people who can help you with this. I'm one of them. ECF is ready and willing to connect you to people other than me. I will say this, Jim Murphy, who is our endowment management solutions, the head of our endowment management solutions, is also one of the most talented legacy giving practitioners in the church. He also is really good at these kind of programs as well. We will be putting together a different webinar, and I'm going to be bringing voices from around the church, Jason being one of them, Merrill Watley being another, and Miriam McKinney at Forward Movement, who I just think the world of and I think is an excellent development director, is going to be joining us among some other people. I hope. And then finally, when it comes to online giving, everyone else is doing it. And while if my daughter were to say that to me, I would lose my mind. In this case, there's a good point here. If you're not going to be receiving gifts online, then you're probably not going to be receiving all the gifts you need. It's just that simple. It's just like, I mean, a few years ago, when everyone was kind of like hemming and hawing about getting a Facebook page, and it just came down to, look, if you're not on Facebook, you're just not there. And it's like, it's annoying and it's frustrating, and there's a lot of reasons not to do it. But at the end of the day, you just kind of, your hand was tied. Well, right now our hands are tied, and we need some way to connect with people virtually and online, so that they can, not only can we receive good stewardship and be good stewards, but that our congregants can also practice good stewardship, right? If they're not putting their check in the plate right now, because they can't, how are they taking care of their own congregation? Well, this is the best way to do it, right? And in the long term, it actually can help you grow. In the long term, when we return to some sense of, I even hate using the term normalcy. When we wind up back worshiping together again, having a robust, or at least something that can be made robust, an online giving program that can be made robust, is really good for your church in the long term. Feel free to reach out. The Episcopal Foundation is a great source for resources, especially vital practices. I'm going to stand up for 1 second and grab one of our resources that I should have grabbed at the beginning, so that I didn't have to do this. But, you know, we created this recently. It's the Finance Resource Guide. It was not written at all with the coronavirus crisis in mind by any means. So some of it may not exactly land exactly the way we planned for it to right now. But this is an excellent resource for those of you who might be looking at financial issues, financial struggles coming up. Stay tuned on the Episcopal Church Foundation website. We're creating a finance-based webinar that will be out very soon that is going to deal with this current crisis and finance issues in the current crisis. This is my email address down here. and my cell phone number, that is my direct cell phone number. If you want to call me, please do. If you want to email me, that's always better, but please email me. I'm available to talk. I'm available to help. I'm willing to do anything to help you succeed in your ministry, and ECF stands by to do that as well. I just want to say thank you to everybody, especially to Victor and to the diocese. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with y'all. If I said something here that you're like, hey, that was crazy, email me. I'm happy to talk about it. Or if I said something that you thought, my goodness, I didn't understand a word of that, I'm happy to talk. So don't hesitate to reach out. Victor, thank you.
Yes, Bill, thank you for all of this information. I think some of the feedback that I've been getting right now and some text is that the material is wonderful, down to earth, practical, and I really appreciate that. And I think it's something that we value, especially in this time. I think, are moments where we are in these uncharted territories where we are opening ourselves to learning how to do ministry today. And this is one of the tools that we need to do. And we need to have these more often. So I'll be tuning to those webinars coming up, to any resource that you will be putting out there. I'll be tuning and sharing it with everyone here so that we can connect and be on those webinars. I think it's so important to be out there right now, learning and especially asking questions in this time. So thank you everyone for being here today. As Bill is saying, we are going to have a moment to share a bit deeper in some of these materials, especially with clergy on Tuesday. It will be from 10 to 11:30. I'll be sending out an invitation, and then coming back to lay leaders as well. We are going to have these roll out and more practical, especially looking at online giving, and especially the section that most of you have been asking for, that is this text giving. And I think Bill will be as well a great resource for us here as well. So thank everyone. Thank you. You are in my prayers, and we continue connecting this way as well. So blessed are you among all of us, and thank you for all that you are doing in your ministry. Thank you.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, folks.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone. Have a blessed rest of the day.
Bye, everybody. I hope you're all making lots of sourdough bread and growing out your Corona beards for those of you who do that.